This is going to be the interactive portion of the day today, right? So before we get started, how many of you are currently on Twitter right now? Like, show of hands, anybody? All right. Go ahead and pull out your smartphones. It's okay to tweet during the course of this presentation. We're going to have our specific hashtag here. So it's going to be CMO challenges. We're going to get some earned media rolling here over the course of the presentation. So let's get rolling. All right. Before we start talking about the future, or even talking about today, we need to get in our Epsilon time machine and jump back a little bit, back to the distant past of 2005, right? So in 2005, pre-smartphone, everything was happening on the desktop. And so you see one person right there in the right corner, rocking the Motorola Razrs right there, taking a picture. Speaking of which, how many of you back in 2005 had the Motorola Razr? Show of hands. This is a safe place. It's okay, really. We can talk about that, all right? Remember trying to text with that? You had like the 3 letters on the one number, and you had to kind of go with that? That was a lot of fun. All right, 2007, fast forward 2 years. Transformational innovation in the form of the iPhone. Why? Well, for those of you who may not remember, and those in our live stream, hello, one of the things that the iPhone really brought together, if you remember, music players, cameras, video cameras were all separate devices. By beginning to consolidate all of these into one form factor, you begin to accelerate the empowerment to the consumer. And we begin to see that come to life. So as you kind of progress down this digital timeline, away from massive portals and away from kind of branded communities during the time, you start to see this acceleration and empowerment of the consumer happening. You begin to see the rise of viral videos. This is creativity just being seen by everybody. You also then begin to see how social begins to empower users. So it's that accessibility to the device that then also combined with the ability to amplify the message through the platform that you begin to see this kind of shift, dynamic shift happening from a marketing perspective. And then what begins to happen? Brand marketers have to respond. It's no longer enough to just broadcast messaging out. You actually have to engage. So that's, again, just another disruption that's kind of driving towards where we are today. Anybody want to sing a couple bars from Friday? You remember this? Yeah, back in the day, Rebecca Black? All right. Rise of the influencers. Then we begin to see the impact of the network effect. It's not enough, again, just to broadcast messaging, but then we begin to see the marketing potential of leveraging these influencers' networks to reach our consumers. Now, again, fast forward again to 2011. What begins to happen? Publishers begin to shift their models. Now it's about visual storytelling. It's the rise of content marketing. Why? Because then you begin to get into this whole idea of personification of brands. So this was all about whenever you'd have a number of organizations and they try to like have witty personas online, and there's still some of that going on today. It's not as prevalent, but it happened. Any Ron Burgundy fans in the audience? Anybody? Yeah, oh yeah, a lot of hands raised on that one. All right, then we move forward to mobile ubiquity, right? This is more of what we're used to seeing on a day-to-day basis. So by 2013, 1 in 5 people on the globe has a smartphone, 67% penetration in the US. It's crazy. All right, how many of you, this is your house? You're watching a show, right? You're either binge watching on Netflix. I'm trying to throw in these industry buzzwords for you guys. It's all good, right? But as you're actually watching television in between, you're actually playing on your devices. So again, your attention is a scarce resource now, right? So again, this is fragmentation. Media is more fragmented than ever. That's why I'm so happy that we have Conversant. So from that perspective now, everyone is a publisher. The power of user-generated content to drive advocacy on behalf of the brands has come to the forefront as well. And by the way, how many people have taken a selfie in the last 24 hours? Anybody? Anybody? Yeah. Oh, come on, I know you have. In the last 30 minutes, anybody? Come on. All right, just making sure. Also, if you have kiddos, like I do, I've got a 13, 11, and 8, 13 to 18-year-olds, there's been a seismic entertainment shift that's happened. So their top 5 celebrities aren't from Hollywood. They're YouTube celebrities. Any gamers? Anybody following PewDiePie in here? Anybody? No? All right. All good. So again, now this leads us to where co-creation is the new normal. Why it's so important, what John and Jill were talking about earlier today. The whole process, it's not enough just to create your own owned content. You have to be able to carry that message consistently across all channels. You have to be able to create that. You have to be able to co-create it. You have to be able to integrate that content into existing properties, and then also fuel the creativity of individuals to create that user-generated content. So this is just the new normal. And you hear the CMOs talking about trust, right? In order to gain trust of the consumer, people trust people, not brands. So this is a very important thing you have to balance when you're talking about reach versus trust and again, the role that the consumer plays in this process. And again, I mentioned it before, but we're in the age right now where content is the currency, right? We're in this attention economy. It's a scarce resource. So as we begin to move forward, you've already seen this massive acceleration of change, the empowerment of users. And now we're moving forward from not only content marketing, in this nonlinear path to purchase, but yet there are signals now being sent up in massive amounts of data. So one of the core things from attitudinal to behavioral to transactional that are now fundamentally required for personalization. How many people have seen the new Star Wars? More importantly, how many people haven't seen the new Star Wars movie? See it, you must. Okay, last Star Wars reference of the day, all right? But again, personalization, incredibly relevant for today. And again, for those of you tweeting live right now, our hashtag CMO challenges to the live stream, talking to you. But let's talk a little bit about, again, that's what's happening from a consumer standpoint. So we're seeing all of these rapid changes. We're seeing the empowerment of the consumer. So now from a CMO perspective, you see just a massive amount of challenges just on a regular basis. The reinvention of the role, right? CMOs today, they have to be creative thinkers. They have to be strategists. They have to be intelligent when it comes to data and mapping that to creativity. They also have to understand all of the various domains and disciplines associated with marketing. We're talking about marketing automation, digital execution, media, all these kind of key pieces. We talk about competitive threats, the pace of change, even managing growth. Short-term growth is such an incredibly important piece, but then you start thinking about the changing expectations of consumers and the landscape. That leads us to fragmentation. That's actually a graphic of the Android operating system. So if you think about just the amount of solutions that are out there and available for a CMO to try to wade through, fragmentation, having somebody who can help them make smart decisions and smart investments on where they need to be putting their dollars is incredibly important. I wonder if there's a data and technology services company that can help with that process. All right. So as we continue to move forward, we've heard it multiple times today. It's about the mitigation of risk, right? That's the number one thing. Don't get fired. Don't do anything that's going to kind of drive that process forward. So again, how do you manage risk? How do you make investments? How do you take and find the best possible talent? So traditional skill sets are still viable, but yet I was in a CMO meeting last Friday, and this issue came up. They were thinking about the course of their 2 to 3 year plan, and they were considering, should I hire and develop my own set of data scientists and analytics? And we're like, no, you shouldn't come to us. But again, these are discussions that are being had, and there are opportunities for us to fill that trusted advisor role, and these things are happening today. Integration is another key challenge from a technology perspective and an agency standpoint. When you think about having to manage all the various agency teams, as well as the technology providers, and all of the other kind of internal politics that come with it, integration is a key piece. And think about how difficult it is for a CMO. Imagine how difficult it is to actually then try to drive decision-making for the rest of the C-suite. So permission and driving that process, especially when it comes to investing in experimental technology, really key. No, that is not my dog. I have a ferocious Maltipoo, but again, she can't jump that high. So from an agility standpoint, you think about real-time marketing is just table stakes now, but yet having the ability, most CMOs organizations aren't necessarily structured to be flexible, to be agile from a budgeting perspective, from a resource deployment perspective. From a global standpoint, scaling global digitally is a very difficult thing, and you heard it from some of the discussions on the video. So one of the things you have to consider is the talent, new and emerging channels, and all the strategy that's kind of applies with that. And one of the number one key points of differentiation that a number of CMOs actually proclaim is innovation. But the reality is, and there's an immense amount of pressure to innovate, but the reality is most organizations are very linear and aren't necessarily structured for experimentation and innovation. But it's a catch-22, because without it, you're going to be left behind. So you have to help in the guiding of the innovation process and selling in the solutions that work today to meet the short-term goals and needs that they have, but then also continue to work towards what's going to actually help drive my business forward in the next 2 years. And finally, remembering, with all of this going on, that the consumer is ultimately in control, but then putting them in the center of all the initiatives and the efforts. Again, these are all challenges that they face. So that's just today. So what about the rest of just this year in 2016? There's more disruption on the way, right? How do I operationalize my dark data? How do I append location and behavior and make that more usable? How do I address the demands of everywhere commerce? You've seen it now, where I can basically use an emoji for an order, but yet there's complexities on the back end on how we manage that process and attribution and connection. One of the bigger shifts that we see coming that was basically predicted from the Asian markets, the shift from social media to social messaging. You look at Facebook, they have 1 billion users every month. But yet their strategy now is more of a messaging app strategy. You've got 800 million in Messenger, 800 million in WhatsApp, and their core driver of commerce and payments is going to be happening through Messenger. So that's a big shift when you start thinking about our role. It's no longer about broadcasting or personification of content. It's how am I going to enable that conversation in a relevant way. And finally, I was just at CES last week, and one of the things that you see is you just see this massive, massive ecosystem developing around virtual reality and immersive content. So that's real. There are enterprise-level solutions that are being developed right now to create both passive and active virtual reality experiences. There are already solutions for visual commerce where there are contextual hotspots within the experience to help facilitate the shopping experience. So these things are real and they're happening now. And then moving forward, there's even more on the horizon. So you saw it in the intro video too. You saw it whenever they're looking at the glass and there's interaction even in their bathroom mirror. This whole concept and idea of mixed reality is going to be one of the core disruptors that we're going to see even more so than virtual reality over the course of the next few years. What this is the combination of VR and AR, and we're actually able to interact with the experiences real time in your specific environment. But that's where, again, the analysts are predicting massive disruption coming there. And finally, Chris touched on this, a number of the videos touched on this, the role that, from an IoT perspective, there's an arms race to control the sensors and the data that are going into the devices that are then leaving your home. There's a massive revolution happening right now around artificial intelligence and the mode of robotics. And I personally believe that's going to be the center of the connected home. And then ultimately, how are we going to continue to move forward whenever we're no longer marketing to people, but it's like system-based? So these are all things we, as Epsilon, are in a position to be that trusted advisor for our CMOs. We understand what's happened. We understand where we are today. We understand, more importantly, where things are going. We're building solution sets that Chris has been talking about and that Wayne's going to be talking about here from a services standpoint. And again, we are potentially that trusted advisor. Not potentially, we are. Thank you very much.